I'm Robert Lee Ord Jr. from the South Side of Chicago, and I am always pleasure to be here on another Sunday at 7 o'clock p.m. to bring you perspectives from brothers around this nation to hopefully give you information that you can use. Is that echoing? We got some kind of echo going on. Can you hear that? I'm sorry.
You're good over here.
Yeah, come on off. Thank you. Again, that's using my wife. But anyway, well, we hopefully get you the information that you need that'll hopefully make you allow you to make some conscientious decisions to better your destiny. And there's an important job to be done, but we only need 4 people to do it. Everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. And with that, this is a coalition roll call. So, my man Dave, what's up?
What's going on, brother? This week I will check in as anybody.
Okay.
And I'm going to say anybody because a lot of times when we look at the problems going on in the community, in our world, we always say, I wish someone would do something about this. And anybody can be the first person to start the change that you want to see. So anybody is going to be my word. It's going to be the person I'm going to choose this week. My word for this week is benighted. Benighted is a state of pitiful or contemptible intellectual or moral ignorance. And unfortunately, a lot of us are suffering from a perpetual state of being benighted, something that I hope that we can change in the collective perspective.
Man, my goodness. Oh, my goodness, Dave. Anyway, Vince, go ahead and check in, Vince.
Hey, I don't know if I can go behind Dave, man, but I'm trying my best. I'm the new kid on the block from the west side of Chicago, but I live in Arizona with my wife and 2 beautiful kids. And the word of the day for me is somebody. Somebody has to do something. A lot of times people stand around and ask, okay, who's going to do what? Someone needs to do something. And the word of the day for me is accountability. What's your accountability in the process? You know, where you are in your life. Hold yourself accountable to change your situation. Don't look for someone else to do it. You do it. So that's my perspective, fella.
Oh, my man. I check in as nobody. Nobody. I leave the everybody word for Ernest, but this week I feel like being nobody because at the end of the day, you got to move in silence sometimes. Sometimes you cannot allow your left hand to know what your right hand is doing. So you can only do that as nobody sometimes, and it's just as productive. My word of the day is network. It's important to network with people that can actually position you sometimes in ways that you cannot reach yourself. So it's good to network and position yourself with people that can help you get to your destiny instead of thinking you can do it all alone. And hopefully you can find a way to do that in your with that we're all checked in. My man gonna come in late, a little bit late, so Ernest's gonna jump right in, but we're gonna get the conversation started. First of all, welcome to the program, Vincent Watkins. Man, we appreciate your response, and I want to introduce everybody to you from the west side of Chicago, and talk about some of the things you're doing. Talk about your educational background. Let's say it in the right way, Professor Vincent Watkins. So let's go ahead and talk about your educational background.
Thank you, sir. So my educational background is very interesting. I'll talk more about that later, but I earned a bachelor's degree from Northeastern Illinois University, and I earned my master's degree from Chicago State University, criminal justice. And I graduate next Saturday with a second master's in adult education and training from the University of Phoenix. And I start my PhD program in May with the University of Phoenix. And so the reason that formal education is interesting for me because I attended Gordon Tech High School on the north side of Chicago from 84 to 88. And I had a 1.75 GPA. I had a D average, D as in David, not B as in boy, D as in David. And so my mom was very instrumental in allowing me to continue my education. I figured out the importance of education later on in life. And now, I've been blessed to have a certain degree of education, man. But I tell you, like I tell everyone I speak with, my true knowledge and education came from the west side of Chicago, from my mom, from my dad, from my grandparents, from my uncles. They gave me the true inspiration and education. So I've been really blessed with that. And currently, I'm working with Tempe PD on training police officers. Tempe PD is a local police department in Phoenix, Arizona, in Arizona. So I'm working with them. And I'm also the criminal justice program director at Paradise Valley Community College. And I also have the YouTube channel. So just a side note, the YouTube channel, man, it's my baby. It's very important to me because we discuss 4 topics: fashion, finance, the criminal justice system, and how to become an alpha male through social intelligence. Various aspects of life that we need as young men. So I'm just thankful and blessed to be here, guys. So thank you.
Okay, we're gonna touch on all of those, man. Absolutely, we're gonna touch on all of those. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, so we can get Dave involved immediately, also, is we want to talk about this. What's called? His name is Wright. What's his name? DeJuan Wright, right?
Yeah.
Dante Wright. So, Dave, I want you to set up this conversation in the sense that I know you were just talking about it on your platform the other day. I just wanted you to talk about starting about one of the things that really stirred you about these cases, the pattern of these cases. Sometimes we keep talking about it on a collective perspective, like we don't want to keep having these conversations, but we keep having to have these conversations. So I want you to start by saying, about, what your take is, your early take is on this case from what you've seen during the evidence.
Well, let me just say that, let me preface what I'm going to say by saying 2 things can be true at the same time. The first thing that I want to say is that we do need to reimagine policing in this country. We need to set some federal guidelines on SOPs or how police engage citizens based on the threat level. I think if we look at the case of Dante Wright, this is a very, very unique. It's not unique in the respect that it keeps happening to Black men, but it is unique that the threat level that he represented was not commensurate with the response of police, that they either tried to tase him and inadvertently shot him, according to the officer who actually pulled the trigger. So I say that first to say that we do need to change our standard operating procedures for police officers so that their reaction is commensurate with the threat. I would also say that we as African Americans, and this is especially germane when we look at the George Floyd case, we've got to stop this watching Black men getting murdered by police, standing around in the numbers of dozens and or scores holding our cell phones. That's no longer acceptable. If we as Black people, we have to put our bodies on the line if we want to see these things change. And we actually had a guest on our show on Friday who his name was his organization is Black Ops. They operate out of New York, and they're talking about how they're going to start Black people policing the police. That's what we have to do if we want to. We can't sit back and wait for things to happen and wait for the machinery to change. We've got to speed this up. That said, all those things said, I do think it's important that all of us recognize that Dante Wright, his actions precipitated his murder. The moment that he got pulled out of the car and the police officers told him, "You have a warrant, you are under arrest," he should have just complied and allowed himself to be arrested. Had he allowed himself to be arrested, he would probably still be. I would go so far as to say he would still be alive today. So again, I think we have to approach this problem by acknowledging that 2 things can be true at the same time. The police can err, they can be at fault. There are systemic changes that we need to see. Black people as a community, we need to step up if we want to expedite seeing those changes. But at the individual level, you cannot not comply with the law and then act surprised when you get a bad outcome.
Go ahead, jump in, Vincent, because you was talking about the fact that you teach what it's like doing a stop. So that went right in today's point of view, and I think this is important to talk about to a degree. To just talk about it without being offensive, in the sense of saying, like, nobody's saying that people deserve to die. And I don't even want that perception out there because that's not what's being said. But to Vince's point, and I think he'll be able to articulate it much more, there's a responsibility we have as citizens when we encounter stops. And I think that's a strong emphasis we need to place. So, Vince, sir.
So, you know, Dave, I agree with you on your last point wholeheartedly. Your first point, individuals have to get involved other than the videotape. I have to push back with you on that one. I'll tell you why. But let me preface this statement by saying this, guys, and it shocks people to their core. Coming from the west side of Chicago, I have never, ever had a negative interaction with a police officer, ever. To the point where when I was in 4th grade, up until I was in my 40s, I had aspirations of becoming a police officer, and I actually pursued that career. It just wasn't the career for me. You know, I just didn't have the skill set needed to become a police officer. Never had negative interaction with a police officer. And I'm gonna tell you guys why. It's mind-boggling, right? It'll blow your mind. And Dave, you said this the best. Comply. If you comply, if you're respectful, 9 times out of 10, you won't have issue. And here's another point. On my YouTube channel, I have a video. It's 1 minute and 43 seconds. The 5 critical points that you need to know when you pull over by a police officer. He pulls you over, roll down your windows, take the key out the ignition, place the key on the dashboard, place your hands on the steering wheel, keep your registration and insurance card in the sun visor. So you pull down your sun visor and give the officer your documents. We have to understand this. A traffic stop and answering a domestic violence call, those are the 2 critical, high-tense situations for a police officer. They want to go home as well, just like we want to go home. And so, Dave, to your point, I really like what you said because it's true, and I think more African-American men need to say this. When Daunte Wright was, first of all, he was pulled over by a pretextual stop. Basically what that is, they found a minor traffic violation, and that was the reason they were able to pull him over, and they discovered another violation, but I guess like something was hanging from his rearview mirror. Ran his name. Now he has an outstanding warrant for his arrest for a violent charge. Apparently it's an armed robbery charge. So now you're a police officer, you're actually hiding because this is a violent person that you're dealing with. To your point, David, when they tried to arrest the guy, when you make an attempt to enter your vehicle as a police officer, they're not going to wait to see what's going on. They're going to use whatever means necessary to neutralize this. Graham versus Connor, the Supreme Court decision gave police officers that ability to say, hey, police officers, your job is extremely dangerous. We're going to use a certain degree of power and autonomy to neutralize the situation. Now, a little caveat with that, and I've always had to ask myself this. If that kid was a kid from Naperville with a Naperville Central t-shirt on saying, hey, I attend Naperville College, and he was a different race, would that situation have been handled differently? In my heart of hearts, I think it would have been. And here's why. 1969, Jerome Skolnick coined the term symbolic assailant. Basically, he conducted a study and said this. In law enforcement, if you are bigger, taller, more muscular African-American male, you are automatically perceived as a threat just based on your physical attributes. So, David, to your point, there's a lot of systemic situations and systemic bias inculcated in the criminal justice system. Now, to your other point, I think that we place ourselves in more danger if we try to get involved with the physical aspect of, policing the police from a physical standpoint. I think the best thing that we can do is use our phones because legally you're protected under the First Amendment right. You can use your phone to videotape a situation. And let's think about this, just hypothetically. Let's say the mob jumped on the police officers to try George Floyd, and there's no videotape. Everyone would have been shot, and justifiably so, because the police officers, they have to protect themselves and the public. That videotape, that may be the evidence that convicts this officer in that particular process. So it's an accountability situation. But yeah, we can definitely overcome it. I think we definitely have to use our resources, comply, know your laws, know your rights, and just be professional when you're dealing with the police officers.
Let me push back on.
Go ahead, Dave.
Let me push back on you on 1 second about citizens intervening and the videotape being the evidence that's needed. A video recording of a police officer breaking the law is not what convicts that police officer. What convicts that police officer are the people who are sitting on that jury, the people who are sitting in the jury box. And as long as we have people, irrespective of race, but as long as we have individuals who are sitting in the jury box who are just programmed to viscerally defer to the police officer, you can show whatever evidence you want of malfeasance on the part of the police officer. That's why, going back all the way to Rodney King until today, 95% of cases where we have the actual event documented by video, the police officer still walk. Let me also use what happened on January 4th with the Capitol Police. We had that one Capitol Police officer who was interviewed, and he said that they were, a bunch of people jumped on him. They were about to take his gun, and he thought to himself, if I take my gun, I can shoot a couple of these people. But he immediately thought, I might get off 1 or 2 shots, but there are enough people out here, I'm going to get subdued, and they're going to take my gun and kill me. What's my point? My point is that a police officer with a handgun that has 9, 10 bullets in it, he can't shoot. He can't get off 10 rounds if 10 people are trying to subdue him. At the end of the day, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And as long as we're watching our fellow citizens being murdered on the street, it's going to continue to happen. Police officers have to know that there's going to be a reaction by the citizenry that their behavior is no longer acceptable, especially in the age of now they can quit. And all they're going to do is go across town to a few towns over and get hired by some new city and some new police chief that agrees with what they did. So we can't allow that until we get a national registry that's going to hold police officers accountable and strip them of their immunity so they can't switch to other police forces and things like that. Yeah, it's a responsibility. We have a responsibility to protect each other since the police are not doing their job in protecting it.
I mean, Dave, I don't know if I necessarily wholeheartedly agree with that in a way. I mean, it's not so much that I disagree with the concept of what you're saying about us being responsible for self, but I think let's put this in order in this way. The point of we saying that we have to be able to know how to act during the stop, that's to protect you, period, right? We're just gonna go in this order. That's to protect you so that you can have a moment to get justice if something unfair happens. But I think we start responding in a way, a lot of times we respond in ways that escalate the situation, even when we know it's cocked. It may be cocked, and you can escalate the situation by your emotional responses, right? So just if you got your license plate, your insurance and stuff right here, pull it down, boom, 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 so you can live to fight another day. You can live to talk another day. I think that was the emphasis that was getting played. It wasn't necessarily about the concept that you're saying that we should not do anything, and just keep letting these people, do this. I agree with you on the concept of that, but I don't think it should be before the police. The police have to police first. Like they gotta be police first, right? So if we don't expect the police to be police and we start what we would call police not that, there's gonna be more people get killed because people are not structured, we clumsy, we unorganized out there trying to fight the police out there on the site. When there was clearly some misunderstood gestures that go on between an individual and a police officer from the point of encounter where we don't necessarily know all of the details of it. Or there may be some background. You know what I'm saying? We got to be careful with that, that broad and general comment to say, jump in there and, 15 people, swelling up at the police on the scene and we don't need to.
Let me qualify what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm speaking specifically about situations a la George Floyd.
Okay.
Those people stood there and watched for 9.5 minutes while Derek Chauvin was kneeling on his neck. I'm not talking about intervening when somebody gets pulled over and they're getting a ticket. Although, if somebody's getting pulled over and getting a ticket, there should be some citizens who are pulling over and also documenting what's going on to make sure that the police know that somebody's watching. Also, I'll just further, I would encourage everybody who's watching me, go to YouTube and look up the NFAC. NFAC, they're the Not Fucking Around Coalition. And when Ahmaud Arbery was killed in Georgia, they went to and they guarded Ahmaud Arbery's parents' home. And there were 200 plus black men and women with long guns on that block. And guess what the police did? Nothing. They didn't go down there and mess with those people. They didn't go down there and tell them, "Hey, let me see your gun registration. Let me see your gun card." They didn't go down there because it was 200 organized black men and women who were armed, who are out there, who are protecting Ahmaud Arbery's parents' home, and nobody came down there and bothered them. So again, I'm not talking about intervening with the police when they're doing their job. I'm talking about intervening with the police when they're not doing their job.
Okay, Ms. Haggard, I want to say hello to you. Thanks for chiming in. Daryl Smith, what's up, my good brother? Thank you for chiming in. James Smith, my man, I salute you. Military, man, active duty military. He says, is this the action that all citizens should take regardless of color? Okay. Is this the action that all citizens should take regardless of color? That's what the question is. I think James wanted to chime in. I think he was referring to Vincent's quote, his commentary when he was talking about, hold on one second, let me get Ernest over. Hey, Mr. Ernest Johnson, what's up, man? You got to check in as everybody, man. That's who you are. Check in real quick, Ernest. You on mute, Ernest.
I'm on mute. Am I off mute?
We good. We got you.
All right, man. Forgive me, guys. I'm shooting the video, so that was my bad. So I do apologize for that for being late. But anyway, everybody checking in, Southside, coming in with that different perspective, looking to get in on this conversation, man. I'm in.
All right. Hey, whose phone is that? Is your phone, Vincent? Whose phone is that making the background noise?
We should just probably all mute.
Oh, no, we good. We good now. We just gonna keep it moving. Y'all are distracted. We're gonna keep it moving.
Hey guys, can you hear the static in the background?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Whose phone do you think that is? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. But can you hear the static as well?
Yeah, as long as we can hear each other, let's just keep it moving. I don't want to be at time. But here's the thing. You gotta hop on, James. I got you in a minute. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was James said accountability is not being held, which is what most people fail to recognize. Accountability is not being held, which is what most people fail to recognize. Now, who wants to jump in on that point? Accountability is not being recognized. I think that's an important point to state.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me okay, but I have to give you guys this input, man. Listen, if the George Floyd situation, if three or four individuals would have jumped in, that officer would have shot each and every one of them and been justified in doing so. In George Floyd, this case would have never been handled the way it's being handled. Legally speaking, Conner versus Graham, you cannot interfere with police officer doing their job. We can barely videotape. You can videotape police officer, but you can't interfere with them doing their job. You have to have a safe distance. If we do that, we're going to open up another ball of wax of issue. Now, here's what's important. I think we're missing this perspective. There are over 800,000 police officers in America. The vast majority, 99%, do the right thing. In 2011, this is over 10 years ago, 2011, there were over 64 million documented interactions with law enforcement. 64 million, which means there's probably 70 million that were not documented. Of those 70 million. 0.13% made it to the mainstream media. Also, we have to understand, if we continue to have this divide against, I'm telling you, man, I work with a lot of great police officers, African American, white, black. I've had white police officers in my home. We can't miss that particular aspect, that the vast majority do their job correctly. Now, even with the situation that happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I want to talk about that as well, because this kind of ties into what we're talking about. That individual that was shot in the back by a police officer, he did several things wrong. More importantly, he walked away, turned his back to the police officer, opened up his car door, reached inside his car door to grab something, wherever it was. He was excited. Right. He didn't even get in trouble. The police officer did not get reprimanded for that, because he did what he was supposed to do. The law is on the police officer's side. When you comply, things should be okay for the most part. I don't want to miss this particular perspective, because listen, man, there are a lot of police officers that do the right thing. A lot. You got to understand from a critical thinking perspective. If the media only chooses to show the 0.3%, why is that? They're creating a divide between the community and law enforcement. At the end of the day, with everything said and done, when you need someone to come to your house after a murder or domestic violence, who are you going to call? A police officer. When someone is in a burning building and they need help, who are you going to call? A police officer. Every day, they risk their lives for our community. But we have to understand this. There is accountability. And I go back to this case that we're talking about. The guy had a warrant out for his arrest for attempted robbery. Entered the car. Now, being murdered like that or being shot, to me, that's not an accident, right? That's a major issue. You don't mistakenly shoot someone in the back with a taser, right? So that's a major issue. But my point is this: we can't lose focus on the 99% police officers that do the right thing. At the end of the day, if the citizens are attacking police officers, the police officers are attacking citizens, guess who wins? The bad guys. If you talk to any police officer, they will tell you they don't want to work with police officers either. If you talk to anyone in the community, they don't want criminals in their neighborhood either. We need to get back to the community saying we want the same thing, which we do. Get the bad people off the street.
Well, I will just say this one thing in response to that. A lot of times people use the old saying that, the majority of police officers, are good guys and good cops, and it's only a small number of police officers that actually mess everything up. My response is that as long as there are police officers who knowingly give bad police officers a pass and don't rule out the bad police officers, they're just as guilty in my eyes. They're just as guilty by turning a blind eye to their fellow police officers who are the racists and who are the people who are abusing citizens.
I agree that they just as guilty. I agree with that because we putting a demand on integrity. For you to do the right thing with accountability. Well, there's an integrity issue that's going on, because that makes them gangbangers. That makes them loyalty to the game of saying like the no snitch code. That lack of integrity is destroying our society, even in the police departments or even in different areas of life. That lack of integrity to say you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to act like this, you're not supposed to behave like this. This is what I sworn. It makes everything we swear about nothing. It means nothing. So I wanted to touch on some other things, unless somebody else had some on that subject right there. I want to touch on some other things too. Good. Okay, I wanted to ask, opposed to the panel, about police training on the other side, or the police responsibility. What police should be held accountable, for. Because with this case in Chicago, we were just talking about in Mexico. In a little village. I said Mexico. Hey, you on mute, Ernest. It seemed like you're on mute. Take yourself off mute. But anyway, in Little Village, we were just talking about the young 13-year-old boy who got shot, right? and he had a gun in his hand. I mean, we could see the gun in his hand from the angle he was standing on. But when he lifted his hands up, he got shot. So that immediately made me start thinking about across the board about some disconnect that we have from the police officers when they step into these situations and they're nervous. And my initial take is, if you're that nervous, you shouldn't be a police officer. If you're that nervous to the point where you cannot recognize from moment to moment, step to step, when there's a threat and when there's not a threat, if you're not trained or you're not paying, I know you're trained on it, you're not paying attention to detail by detail because it's a life and death situation. And then when they go through the court system, they're not held accountable for those mistakes. When you make a mistake with a gun drawn on somebody, you ending their life. It's not just like you can say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry to the family. You ended a life. So I just want to hear what y'all take is on that. That responsibility and accountability of the police officers, not in a cliched way. Hey, Ernest, you on mute. Anybody got a take on it? Because I don't want to.
Go ahead, Vincent.
Vincent, you on mute.
Well, let me jump in while we're waiting on these gentlemen. Really quickly, if I hate to sound corny, like take a line from a Spider-Man movie, but with great power comes great responsibility. If you are out there and you take a firearm and you murder somebody, you should be held to account, just like if a citizen takes out that gun.
Go ahead, Dave.
That's it. I mean, if you are a police officer and you murder a citizen, you need to be held accountable. Period. So if you murder someone and you're charged with second degree or third degree murder, then you got to suffer the consequences. Nobody cares if you're a police officer. It's your responsibility to exercise your responsibility and having the privilege to carry a firearm. It's your responsibility to make sure that you handle it correctly. And if you make a mistake, an accident happens, you should still be held accountable, just like you would be held accountable as a regular citizen.
Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good point, though.
I don't know what's going on with my video. My video won't come on, but and the reason why my voice is different, man, I got a head cold. It's been killing me for like the last month. But at any rate, my piece on this is, especially coming from the type of work that I do, working with people in terms of their brains and then their nerves, their emotional reactions to things and how the brain works. I totally get it, like whereas people can be like, okay, well, his hands was up, the boy complied, and so therefore, the police officer is unjustified in shooting. In terms of the accountability in terms of that, I think a lot of people have different levels where, we have to look at it that people use different levels of accountability. When you are a police officer, your level of accountability is quite different than that of a civilian. So because your responsibility is different, your training is different, and so therefore a lot of circumstances, they have gotten past it. But as we can see, things are changing. There used to be a time where they could shoot a person and they go home and celebrate, Now, that police officer who shot that boy the other day, he's worried. He's concerned. See, that didn't used to happen, bro. So the level of accountability is changing. I think with time, we'll see a more perfect union, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's what we're required to do. We're required to input into government to say what's not working. Let's make some changes, and we hope that government will be open to making those changes. And that's my input on that. Simply put.
Go ahead, Vincent. Everybody froze. I'm gonna read James' comment. James is making some fantastic comments. They should be trained to react and respond a certain way. You can't tell me a soldier in a war zone cannot shoot until multiple rules of engagement have been met. If they shoot someone without following these rules, they will get jail time and life will be ended. Now, I don't know, James. That's a little extreme to me as far as saying a police officer that's protecting and serving is the same
Civilians.
as a war zone, huh?
Right. Protecting civilians.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you meant. I don't know, James, if that's what you meant specifically. You know, I'm trying to put it in content, but I don't think that that's the same expectation we have for the police force to be.
I didn't take it that he meant it that way at all. I think he was comparing a police officer and a soldier on the field, both of whom have weapons, both of whom are in dangerous situations, and there are rules of engagement when you are a soldier, just like there are rules of engagement when you are a police officer. But if you go out there and you murder somebody as a United States soldier, yeah, you're gonna get court-martialed. You've been in the military.
I got you.
You're gonna be court-martialed, and you're going to get a heavy penalty, and you're going to be judged by other people in the military. When you're the police, when you're a police officer, and that's probably what we need to do. One of the things that I wrote about in Seton Speaks about reimagining policing in this country is that all police officers, when they go on trial, number one, the actual victim should never be their identity should never be revealed. That way, jurors can't look and say, "Oh, this was a black victim," so they have one thing in their head. "Oh, this was a white victim," they have another thing in their head. Justice is blind, like the lady holding the scales.
That's your point, Dave.
We should not see the victim. We should just be looking at the facts of the case. Number two, every police case, the jury should be made up of FBI. Members of the FBI or some other law enforcement agency that is not local, so you won't because we're asking lay citizens to make determinations about actions that are being taken by police officers, and they don't necessarily have the acumen to judge them fairly. They're just making a decision based on how they emotionally connect to the police officer and how they emotionally connect to the victim. There's some little things we could do, or we could change it like that.
However, I know it's a great point where you're saying, justice is blind. However, in the Sixth Amendment, you have that clause where every person who's being accused has the right to confront their accuser. So, in the way that that's been interpreted historically, is that that's face to face. So, that person begins, so I don't know how at this particular point, like how we can make that pivot to that particular move, because that would be such a radical move in terms of how it's been historically interpreted. However,
but to use real quick, just to use what you just said, if you're talking about the accused being able to face their accuser, if we're talking about a police officer who murdered a citizen, the person who's accusing them is the state, not the person who they murdered. George Floyd is not in court suing Derek Chauvin. The state is suing or convicting Derek Chauvin on behalf of George Floyd.
Right. I get that point. Yeah. So, but I mean, again, it's just to kind of elaborate on these police officers in these particular situations. And again, just from my experience and what the brain does, and in that particular point, I know, Rob used that word nervous, obviously, which comes from the word nerve. And what you're talking about here is the vagus nerve. That's the nerve that is actually being activated in these particular types of moments. And what we know from studies in terms of studying of the brain and how it reacts in these particular situations, that vagus nerve is going directly to the reptilian brain, which is responsible for strictly protecting that person. And so therefore, this person is not in the neocortex as much as we want them to be. However, they are not. And even though they are trained to be in these particular situations, the brain still autonomously takes over in certain circumstances. And then especially in this one. Now, in that police officer's mind, this boy has a gun. Okay. Last thing he knows when the boy turns around, I think that was what his mistake was turning around. If he would have complied, because I know everybody's like, "Oh, well, he complied." Well, he he complied long term, so to speak, because he did what he was going to do, and then he complied with it, and then he turned around. I think that was his mistake, because with that being said, Rob, if you're running from me and you got a gun and you turn around the last time I'm thinking, hey, you about to shoot me. So with that, you're about to get shot. So I think that's how this actually transpired. It's not that I agree with it, because obviously everybody has to give an account for what they do. And of course, depending on the level of training of a person, you can expect that kind of outcome. When we look at the lady who had 26 years and ended up mistaking her gun for her taser, again, it doesn't matter. You still have to give an account for your mistake. When I make a mistake on my job, I have to give an account for my mistake. But obviously, depending on the level of the consequences, depends on the level of accountability. And I think we're at a point where we can all reasonably say, yeah, that makes sense. But that hasn't been the historical case with police officers. They've been held to a different standard. In a lot of cases, the standard that they've been held to, they haven't been held to. So with that being said, that's why they've been able to get away with it for so long. But obviously, it's a different day. It's a big different day, man. We burning down police stations, man. It's a different day. So they
Well,
live.
like I said earlier, I said this before you joined the call, Ernest, is that if we really, really want to see, and I'll use George Floyd as an example, instead of 20 or 30 or 50 people standing around and yelling at the police officers and holding their smartphones and getting a video and documenting what happened with their phones, if 20 of those people had intervened and pulled Derek Chauvin off of George Floyd, some other people might have gotten shot, some other people might have gotten arrested, but George Floyd would still be alive. And that's what we're not talking about. We're not talking about putting our bodies on the line for each other. We'll stand there and videotape and yell and call names and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, George Floyd is still dead. And that's my issue with what's going on.
I fit man Dave on this G thing tonight, man. Not that he's not on a normal basis, but that was some G thing stuff right there, and I definitely have to agree, because you are correct. You're right. There would have been some other consequences. Some other people would have went to jail. There would have been some other, but like you're right. Officers were willing to actually use their bodies. They were being bit by dogs. They were being, shot by, fire hydrants, being harassed physically. And they literally put their bodies, their lives, their children on the line. There's so many names that we can mention, right? Who literally put their lives on the line. And you're right, Dave. I don't know what that disease is that we're not willing to do that today, but you're right.
You don't know what that disease
that's
is.
1,000% on that one, bro.
It's called fear of death. Like, I'm just saying, I mean, it's one thing, it's one thing that I understand that point, but I just think, like Vince was saying earlier, I just think that we got to be real careful, not to break the law, so to speak. You don't want to break the law.
It's a just law, brother. Like EJ was just saying, in the 60s, it was against the law for Black people to sit at a lunch counter, but we sat there anyway because it was an unjust law. It was illegal for us to go to certain parts of town or to drink from the white water fountain, but we did it anyway because it was an unjust law. We're not talking about just a capricious, arbitrary intervention into what a police officer is doing their job. We're talking about watching a police officer kneel on the neck of a fellow citizen for 9 minutes.
Right.
I'm talking about extreme cases like that. We have to be willing to intervene when police officers are breaking the law. If a police officer is doing his job, and in the commission of his job, someone gets hurt or someone gets shot, like in the case of Daunte Wright, or even the case of this Latino gentleman from Chicago. Those are situations where you can say, okay, Daunte Wright, he resisted arrest, he got shot. The young man, the Latino man in Chicago, he was running down a dark alley with a gun in his hand, and the police officer had to make a split-second decision on whether or not he was going to get shot or shoot. But we're not. That's completely different from George Floyd getting his neck knelt off in 9 minutes. And we can't conflate George Floyd with these other situations because they're not the same.
That's right. That's totally, man. That's a very passionate point for me, because even though they seem the same, somebody dies to get the same outcome, but they're completely different. However, However, I still say that this police officer was still under the same type of influence of the brain, where like it is has convinced itself that this is the right move because of its conditioning. Now that's my problem with that type of conditioning, that there are police officers who get in this country that this is how you treat minorities, right? Treat so-called black people, because what was the brother who was in I think South Carolina, North Carolina? He jumps out of his car running from the police. He's I think it was not, I can't remember his name. He gets shot in the back as he was running, and then the police officer, as he get up on his body, he then handcuffs him. That's that's I mean, how do you explain that? That is crazy to me. That is crazy to me. What was done to Floyd is crazy to me. How?
We
I
do
mean,
ourselves.
I'm trained working with kids, Rob. When I was working with kids, we can't when we would restrain them, you can't lay across their backs because of asphyxia. They can't breathe. The diaphragm can't expand when you lay across that. So for a police officer who is in a position who has learned medical procedures, who knows this kind of stuff, hey, he's supposed to be protecting the servant, does this type of behavior? Come on, man, bro.
And we do a disservice to police malfeasance and to innocent citizens who are murdered by police officers when we throw everything into one bucket. Just because the police officer was white and the citizen was black does not make that interaction automatically racist. That's an important point that I have to make too, because like Vincent was saying earlier, a lot of times police officers are doing their job. I've had interactions with police. I've had 3 or 4 interactions with police officers in the last 60 days, and all of them were positive. The police were professional. I didn't get a ticket, even though in those cases I was speeding in one case and I made an illegal U-turn in another case. The police officer asked me, "Show me your license. Have you had a ticket in the last 12 months?" Blah, 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 blah. So my point is that it's not just the fact that the police officer is white and the citizen is black and something bad happens, that it automatically means this is automatically demonstrative of the systemic racism that runs rampant in our criminal justice system. It's more than that. It is someone who is abusing the civil human rights of an individual. And if you don't think kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 28 seconds is an abuse of his human, civil, God-given rights, then we're not calibrated on the foundation of this conversation, because that was an abuse of his human rights to kneel on his neck for 9 minutes and 28 seconds. So that automatically makes his particular case different, and we can't lump him in with everybody else and try to make everything. We can't make everybody a George Floyd. George Floyd's case was unique.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I totally agree with that, George. Yeah. So let's talk about this though. Let's talk about how much do you think we should focus in on, say, like the Fourth Amendment in the way this transpires, or should we put more emphasis on that, or do you think it should be more of a call for action type of thing? Like you're saying already, Dave. You're already saying most of it, but I want to say, is that really the real emphasis we should place on what angle, what direction should we go in?
If you're talking specifically about the Fourth Amendment, we again, that's part of that recalibration and the SOP that we expect from police officers. We've taken police officers' job from arresting someone and introducing them into the criminal justice system, where they are tried, convicted, and so forth. And we've allowed police officers to be judge, jury, and executioner on the street. Mm-hmm. That's if police officers and if law enforcement in general held the Fourth Amendment in as high esteem as gun advocates hold the Second Amendment, then they would not be. They would look at, hey, it's my job to arrest this person, and then let the criminal justice system do their job. There's somebody else who's supposed to convict them. There's somebody else who's supposed to throw them in jail. There's somebody else who's supposed to flip the switch if they get the death penalty. But when police officers accept the role either consciously or subconsciously as judge, jury, and executioner on the street, that's a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what aspect are you referring to? Yeah, I would like clarity in terms of that. What are you referring to about the Fourth Amendment?
He's asking you, Rob?
Who, me?
He's asking you.
Yeah, I was just saying that, you know, to be aware of, you know, really what your Fourth Amendment rights was is, see, I guess the point I want to know is, should we put more of an emphasis of making people aware what their Fourth Amendment rights are so that they'll be aware of what mindset and what disposition you need to be in. When you know your rights, I think you're in a different disposition. You know, like it goes to the point, like if you know, if I know I got my license is straight, my insurance is straight, you know, my registration ain't nothing expired, my attitude is different when I get pulled over. You know, and I think that plays a little bit into the truth. Like it plays into a truism that we need to look at the significance of that. You know, like Vincent was saying earlier that, you know, he never had a problem with police. You know, from a personal standpoint, neither have I. I've never really had a problem with the police, so to speak. You know why? Because most of the time, only time, well, you know, the few times I did have a problem with the police, my license was suspended. So when I got pulled over, I had that anxiety trying to talk myself out of the situation that I was guilty of, you know, and they wasn't buying it.
Correct.
So
Well,
that's
you know
what the issue was. And I'm not saying that's a broad, you know, I'm just trying to paint everybody in the same, you know, picture, but you act different. Like right now, when I get, I don't even get pulled over. Like, but if I did get pulled over, it's easy. It's an easy, here's my license registration, you know. And I don't even ask them why anymore. I don't even ask them why do you pull me over? I don't even ask.
That's part of your Fourth Amendment right.
Well, my point is, it might be. That's why I'm saying that we put more of an emphasis, but because I know that Fourth Amendment right, and it makes me respond in a way to let them do their thing. See, that's what it does for me to know it. That's my point. For me to know it, here, let them do their job. They're going out there, going back, you know, do their job, and it's like they come back and then they gonna tell me why I got pulled over. They're gonna say, well, you know, you was, you know, whatever reason they're gonna come up with. And then at that moment,
okay, you got the officer the other day, the soldier the other day who was pulled over by police. Okay, he was sirened and signaled by the police to pull over. He went to a gas station for a more publicly lit place. Okay, all right, he's all good, bro. Everything is good. You know, he's complying with what they're saying. You know what I'm saying, in terms of pulling over. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, he asked him, why do you pull him over? Now, this is when they get unprofessional. You know, now this brother, they finally get the brother out of his car, brand new car. He has on his uniform, Rob.
I seen it.
Fully uniformed.
I've seen it.
Okay, he's fully uniformed. They got this brother down on the ground. On the ground, like, because again, like, what's really going on here? You know what I'm saying? That kind of goes to what this brother, you know, the person who posted this I think that's H-Rap, you know. He was like, how can you train someone? Am I still there? Am I still on?
Yeah, you still there?
Oh, okay. The screen changed. He says,
Yeah.
how can you train someone?
Your video disappeared.
Man, I don't know what's going on with my stuff, man. But he was like, you know, basically, how can you train someone to not be afraid? You know what I mean? And how can you train someone, what does he say, to see a segment of the population as human? You see what I'm saying? Like, that's a good question for me, because with what it's saying is here, like, how do you get people to to basically circumvent their core training and code?
That's cool. We got an active duty officer is going to join us real quick on the call, so I'm gonna add him in real quick. James Smith. James, what's up, soldier?
Hey, what's going on with you, man? What's going on?
What's going on, man? You got something you itching to want to say, man. You got a few things that you want to say. First of all, congratulations for your promotion into the ranks of the officers' ranks.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for serving our country.
But yeah, man, like this. First off, first and foremost, I do gotta top my head off to you guys for one, just having a conversation. A lot of people shy away from the subject, so just the fact that you guys are willing to come together and have a real conversation about it and respect difference of opinions in itself is a great monumentous thing. First off, first and foremost, but there's so there's been a lot of good stuff that's been put off. There's been a lot of stuff that I can agree with, something that I can disagree with. But I'll address the situation that he was just speaking of with the black officer that got pulled over, and the comment of how do you teach people how to treat people like humans, right? And my response to that is accountability. There has to be consequences behind those actions, right? When you hold people accountable for what they do, they're conscious about what they do at that point, right? So I'll put it like this, right? If there's more cops getting convicted for the mistakes that they make, right? Those mistakes become less and less because they see that people are being held accountable for those mistakes. So what do you do then? Then you train to a certain standard. You train to the point where you're not making those mistakes, right? People have a fear of losing their job. People have a fear of losing their pension. People have a fear of losing their career, their livelihood. So those mistakes do not happen, right? And I'll fall back on my comment when I said about the military, right? There's rules of engagement that we have to follow before we do anything, right? And it gets to the point where literally it's like, hey, at what point can I shoot to kill to defend myself? Oh, well, there's multiple steps, and it all depends on, and there's multiple levels, right? It depends on if a person is in a car with carrying explosive in a car and they're driving towards you, or if a person is walking towards you, with a weapon in their hand. At this point, you're scared. You're not in your own homeland. You're not around people that know you. None of that. You're in a foreign country. People that don't want you there. You're already scared. Right? So if I raise my gun to shoot anybody that intimidated me or scared me, I will be shooting all day.
Right.
And that's a matter of fact, right? But when I have rules of engagement, right? And you sit there and tell me, if you deviate outside and you do not follow these steps, right, you will pay these consequences. And we've seen it happen multiple times, time and time again. So guess what? At that point, I pay attention to these steps, right? But before I can do a warning shot, I'm, hey, you stop. You cannot come any farther. Stop. They keep walking, right? Okay, fine. Then you can say, guess what? I gotta yell again and tell them to stop again because maybe they didn't hear me the first time. Hey, stop! Don't do this, right? And note, the whole time I'm doing this, they have a weapon in their hand, right? And then they're still walking towards you. So now you let a warning shot go. You shoot, a warning shot. You shoot in there. Hey, stop. Don't do that, right? They still walking towards you. Now, what is the next step beyond that? What, as rules of engagement, and of course, these rules of engagement change depending on how hostile, it is in that area. But in a particular time when I was there, they was like, you cannot shoot to kill until they raise their weapon and point it at you. At that point, I'm dead, right? At that point, when you raise your weapon at me, I'm dead. That's my own personal opinion, right? This is me speaking, James Smith. This is on my own personal opinion. At that point, I'm dead, right? So you mean to tell me somebody literally has to point a weapon at me before I can engage to kill and defend myself? That is absolutely crazy. But guess what? We've seen it happen multiple times. I've seen plenty of people literally have to wait to that split-second moment to defend themselves. And you can't tell me that you can train soldiers to respond and react in that facet, but you can't do it to police officers. That blows my mind. But it comes down to accountability, though, because we know they've shown us, like we've seen it multiple times. We know what the consequences are if we decide to not follow those rules and that guidance. We know what happens. There's no get out of jail free card. It's not there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sympathy from the public. Mm-hmm. I don't care how many signatures you get. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. You're a police officer?
On a global scale.
James, you're a police officer?
No, not a police officer. Negative.
Oh, you're in the military.
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. To date, when there's a civil finding against a police officer, that dollar amount, that settlement has to be paid by the city. So you're driving through Chicago, police officer shoots and kills you, your family sues the city of Chicago, and if there is a finding found in your favor, then the city of Chicago will actually write the check for that dollar amount that goes to the family. What do you think would happen if that dollar amount that went to these families was funded by the pensions of the police department as opposed to the cities that employ them?
See, now you're talking about holding people accountable. So
Right.
I keep saying accountable because accountable is a very strong word, right? When you hold people accountable, I don't care if it's a friend, family, you don't know. When you hold people accountable, things happen and things change, right? Now, when you're talking about taking it out of somebody's pension, right? And you're talking about all cops, not, I don't care about good and bad. People say, yeah, people like the other guy that was in, he gave stats. He said, hey, this percentage of cops are good. This is what happened. Right. This is true. Right. There are, I guarantee, I believe with my whole heart, there are more good cops than there are bad cops. This is true. But the fact of the matter is, those bad cops that are coming to light, there's still no accountability being held. It's not. There is no accountability being held. So when you see when, like your example, when you said if you start taking out of their pension, those good cops started to care. Right? Those good cops started to care, and they started to speak out upon it because now it affects them and their families. Right? And in order to be you can be a good man and not say or do anything, but are you really a good man at that point though? Because you see it.
And that's the point that I made earlier. That's the point I made earlier. We always say it's only a few bad apples, but that's not the whole saying. The aphorism is a few bad apples spoils the bunch. So that's why I said to Vincent earlier, if you are a police officer and you knowingly, there are other police officers on your force, on your team, who are racist, who are abusing citizens, who are taking advantage of people, and you don't say anything, I don't count you as one of the good cops.
But and you're right. So don't get me wrong. I've been on both sides, right? I've seen both sides of it, right? I've been racially profiled before. I've been pulled over for no reason at all before, right? And I've seen times where I've been, given grace just due to the fact that, like, in the terms, like, I'm not big. Like, my whole thing is, like, it doesn't matter if I'm in the military or not. I'm human, right? I should be treated the same way. It doesn't matter what my social status is, what my career field is. It doesn't matter, right? So if I get pulled over, I give them my regular driver's license, right? And I'm a normal person, right? That's just how I operate. But sometimes when I'm going through and I'm looking for my driver's license, they'll see my military ID and they look, oh, are you in the service? Yeah, I'm in the service. Oh, and from that point on, the entire stop, it takes a turn. The demeanor of the cop turns. It shifts, right? You can tell that there's an ease now. Like, he's not on edge, because when I'm out of uniform, I'm just like anybody. I blend in with my society, right? That and that's a fact. When I'm out of uniform, I blend in with my society, right? They don't see, oh, this guy is a soldier, and they don't see that. I just blend in with my society. I'm just another. I'm another number, right? I'm another, because human is not a thing, apparently, right? We forget that we're all people. We're human, and people matter, and that's what we forget as we travel through life in multiple facets and aspects. We forget that part. So
I want to ask you a question real quick. I want to ask you a question. Is it responsible, irresponsible? I want you to talk about the blend, the cultural blend, right? Because amongst a lot of the Black community, we have this culture where I'm gonna use the lack of a better term. The lack of a better term is our blood culture. That culture that promotes the Black on Black crime, right? our blood culture. Every culture got their blood culture. We're just talking about ours, right? But what was different is that our blood culture dress code almost looked like it sets a standard, a fashionable standard, right? It looks like kind of like the young black man's culture has the same look, earrings. It could be the same swag look. You know, even cats my age, we might wear some things that are similar to that culture that puts a presentation. Is it responsible or irresponsible for us to be conscious about how we align with that look? Is it responsible or irresponsible? Because you said you do a social blend when you're off work and you get a different preferential treatment sometimes when we got your military stuff on. But is it responsible or irresponsible?
So I don't think it's irresponsible, and I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why, right? So I like to dress how I like to dress, right? Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have to change what I like or who I am to make somebody else feel comfortable, right? That shouldn't be a thing, because then what does that do? What does that do, right? That empowers certain things to happen. That's what that does. Now, and if you do change who you are, how you decide to dress, how you decide to talk, how you decide to act, right? Guess what you're gonna do? Now you're gonna pass that down to your kids, and now it's the same generational effect. No change will happen, right? No change will happen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that, our brothers and sisters need to continue to get murdered for change to happen. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there should not be a difference in the way that I'm treating or I'm expected to act, based on the color of my skin. And the fact that people to this day still fail to realize that it's a thing blows my mind. It blows, because I see people. I work with people. I work with all types of people. And you hear conversations. And people will find things to justify wrongdoing.
I agree. Why
is that though? That's James, because. Go ahead.
Let me push back on that a little bit, because I was trying to follow where Rob was going for a minute, and then you answered it. But let me ask you this: what branch of the service are you in?
Army.
Okay. You have your regular fatigues that you wear when you go out, and you go out, like if you're going into a war zone, there's a certain uniform you wear, right?
Correct.
Right. And then when you go to a formal function, there's a different uniform that you wear, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you show up if you go to a formal function? Can you show up in some Levi's and Tim's and a wife beater and a hat broke off to the left?
So, me as a service member, so I'll answer it truthfully, right?
Okay.
So, me as a service member, no, I can't. As a service member, no, because I have a specific uniform.
Stop right there. So that's why I'm kind of coattailing on what Rob said. There is a uniform. There's a certain way that you have to dress that conveys, before you open your mouth, that you belong there. Right.
So yeah. So with that being said, so say for instance, so like right now, I have on a t-shirt and basketball shorts, and this is just me around the house. Today I went out to a farmer's market. I went out to the grocery store. Right. This is what I wore. Right. So basketball shorts and a t-shirt. Right. This basketball shorts and a t-shirt, I can guarantee you, I would blend in with society right now. Like, and that fear of something happening or me causing fear to a police officer. And it's just me, basketball shorts and a t-shirt. I'm comfortable, right? This is not, I didn't think about what I put on today. I didn't think like, oh man, I'm about to go kill a game with this outfit right now. Like, no, I just, hey, let me put on some shorts and a t-shirt. It's a little hot outside. It's North Carolina, feel good, great weather. This is what I'm comfortable in. But what I'm comfortable in is frightening to somebody else. But I don't feel like this is frightening. It shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be, because it's the color of my skin. If it's a different complexion, this is not frightening,
right?
It's and I can show, like, was it right here? And you probably can see, like, I have an earring hole. I got one earring hole. I haven't had an earring in this ear I've been, what, 11 years, 12 years since I've been in the military. I haven't had an earring in that ear, but that hole is still there, right? I have people multiple times ask me, you still wear that earring in your ear? No. Well, why is it still there? It ain't none of your business why it's still there. It's just there, right? I don't actively wear that earring though. I haven't put an earring in my ear in 12 years. The hole it won't close up. It's just
I want for a second. Let me just stop for a second. I wanted Dave to finish his where he was going. I wanted to see where he was going, Dave.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm and this is a really, there's a fine line here, but we're being naive as Black men if we don't admit that there are certain looks that will compound the threat that we are perceived as already.
I agree with you. I agree. So on that note, I agree with you 100%, right? I do agree with you. Like if I go out, you know, and I mean, I was young once. If I go out and I have my hat, you know, turned to a certain side, you know, and I present a certain look, like what you're saying is true, right? We do, you know, posture a look, you know, that fits, quote unquote, you know, it fits the description, or it fits what they're afraid of, you know, what that fear is. But my response to that is, though, you like this career is something that you chose, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you chose, right? You cannot be afraid of a specific thing, right? And when it comes down to training, if we want to get into the weeds, even if you are scared of a specific thing, that training should be a balancer and an equalizer to you, right? So if we have the correct training, and you guys brought up the 13-year-old kid that was that we seen in Chicago that was killed. Yes, you 100% right. You seen that he had a gun. You seen that he turned around. When he turned around with his hands up, right? Me personally, the way that we are trained, as he turned around, my entire focus is on what's in his hands. I have to identify what is in his hand before I take action. At that point, that's what they should have been focused on. The identification of when he turned around, if he seen something in his hand. If not, at that point in time, that is no longer a threat. I don't care what happened before. I don't care about the pre. But
we gotta know that the police are not trained. They're not nowhere near organized as the military.
But I agree with you.
Even if you go and you say should, okay, that's idealistic in my judgment. It's idealistic. And so with that being said, we have to deal with what is. There are people who choose to be police officers because they pay good. There are people who choose to be police officers because they want the power. There are people who choose police officers because their legacy. There are so many different. We can say why people should be police officers, but again, we're speaking idealistically, and that's not how things are. And so therefore, you know, when we look at our police departments here, I do criticize, and I'm very critical of the training. I don't necessarily more so, you know, put all of the weight on the police officers as much as I go into the historical lack of professional training that local police officers get. I think depending on the states, state police officers get much more professional training than your city and county police officers. That's just my judgment.
So I have a question. Well, go ahead, Rob.
What I was going to say was, I know, you know, it's like if I was to go to California, right? And I'm going to use a real example. I moved to Flint, Michigan, right? And I learned in Flint, Michigan, that these cats up there they call themselves folks up and folks down, right? Folks up and folks down. I mean, you throw the pitchfork up, that's folks up. You throw the pitchfork, and guess what, folks up? What color did they wear?
They wear blue.
Okay, blue. What color does folks down wear?
They wear red. Yeah. That's universal.
Okay, so the Bloods and the Crips. So I moved into a blue neighborhood, and I had a red Bulls jacket on, right? What do you think I did with my dress code when I moved in that neighborhood?
Yeah, you adjusted
very quickly, you know, because I didn't want the suggestion out there that I was affiliated with something that I wasn't. And I'm saying the mental ability we have to make that decision is a decision we make all across the board all the time. If we identify, it's the reason why a lot of white people it's a lot of white people that's in love with the look of that dunce cat, you know, the dunce cap. You know what I'm saying? They love the way it look. It ain't got nothing to do with the history of racism. I just love the way that big cone cap look. It's the reason why they don't wear it. You know what I'm saying? They don't wear it because they know it identifies something. And that's why I asked the question about is there a responsibility or not? I agree with you from a man's standpoint that we shouldn't have to be worried about what we wear. But when they start attaching certain things to us as men in the Black community, do we have a responsibility to evaluate them and look at them? That's where the question came from. Because at the end of the day, any input or any suggestion I got is to get you to live another day, to
Absolutely.
get your gripe off. But if you were to be able to come, like, say, it's something that I guarantee you, I don't care whether it's wrong or right. I guarantee you I won't do this. I guarantee you won't catch me with no hoodie on in a wrong situation around blacks or police. A hoodie on, because if you're in the wrong community with a hoodie on, you're a suggested threat, even amongst blacks, right? If you put a hoodie on, even in a police stop, you're a suggested threat. Now we look at it like, man, nothing wrong with hoodies, it'd be cold. You know what I'm saying? But for whatever reason, that hoodie has become synonymous to being a threat. You know, so I have to evaluate.
It's not even. Again, I think a lot of times we get too deep. This isn't about being synonymous. If you're trying to do something, if you're trying to break the law, you're trying to be surreptitious. You're trying to be not easily identified. So you're gonna put a hoodie on, you're gonna pull the drawstring tight so it's all around your face because you don't want to be identified. So now if I'm going out wearing a hoodie and I'm pulling the drawstring because it's cold outside, somebody's gonna see that and they're gonna associate like, ooh, criminals do that. But and that kind of coattails to the comment that we have up here. Says Dr. Henry Louis Gates was dressed in a shirt and tie and speaks well and is still stopped at his home. We can't, again, that's disingenuous because we cannot say the police officer that went to Dr. Henry Louis Gates' home was obviously a racist. We can't go to one extreme and say, well, he had a shirt and tie on and he still got mistreated, so it don't matter what I wear. That's not true. That's not true. Just because he got messed with a shirt and tie on doesn't mean that I can wear my pants hanging off my ass and a hoodie and then say, why they messing with me? Because you fit the description. Like we ain't gotta make this. If you see a woman and she's dressed a certain way, you're gonna think she is a certain way. Not because you know her, but because you look at how she's dressed and you're comparing and contrasting her to women who were like that you've seen in the past. So we're making this deeper than it needs to be, man. If you don't want to get misidentified as a thug, don't dress like a thug. Period.
Well, to Dave's point, you know what I'm saying? Because I've been stopped by the police, at different.
My goodness, Dave.
But okay, so I got stopped by four white police officers.
That's like he's 4 drinks in, y'all. Dave is 4 drinks in. He's ready to tell the truth about it.
This is iced tea.
That's what I thought it was.
Oh, wow, that's funny. That's funny. What I was saying is that I got stopped by 4 police officers, 4 white police officers and 1 cop, right? And they stopped me up on the north side. I was on my way home. I was coming down Sheridan. They pulled me over and they was like, basically, what you want? You know what I'm saying? And their approach to me, was very aggressive. Now, I know I can't be using my 4th Amendment rights in this particular moment because it's not about to mean anything. You know what I'm saying? So today's point is that my intelligence lets me know when certain circumstances or when certain facts and truths apply. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know when I can, protest against the police and be like, oh, yeah, whatever. Or I can know and I just give you my idea, whatever. But then I know when it's about to go down, too. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's just from my experience that's helped me understand. Thank God, by the grace of God and by my ancestors, I've never been, thrown up under the jail because I've done the wrong thing or too much of egregious of a wrong thing that a black man should do in those kind of circumstances. Because I can't say, oh, well, I did the right thing. Sometimes it's just, man, you just get lucky. You know what I'm saying? So with that, that's what I got to say to that.
So I like what you said there, right? So you said like you hold the intellect to decide and determine how to act in certain situations, right? And you have to be able to do so, right? You have to be, if there's a time for you to act all big and bad, like, hey, I know the law, blase. I can spit the law to you like nobody business, right? I can do that to you all day. And there's also a time when you need to shut up and just be like, hey, okay, at this point, I'm tracking. Look, I already see where it's going, for my safety, because I care about my life, because I have others, I have people that I care about. I have people, what I'm saying? I'm responsible for other people.
Right.
That you, unfortunately, you have to play that role, right? Yeah. You do. But at the same time, right, we also, we can't allow the negligence to continue to happen, though. And that's what frustrates me, right? Because as a Black community, we know what's going on. We've seen it our entire lives. We've seen it, right? But way before, video cameras came out, we've been seeing it. We've been seeing it in our communities. We've been seeing it. It's not new to us, right? You got some people that it's a shock, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Yeah, it's been happening.
Right.
It's been happening. It never stopped.
Yeah.
Jim Crow ended, but it never stopped, right? But at the same time, though, we also have to do our part with educating those that we have, that we're able to influence, right? And I'm particularly speaking about the younger generation, right? Because they're going to be the ones that carry the torch, right? They're going to be the ones who are going to make the real difference. Not trying to be funny, but even myself, like, we're old, right? We're old. Not saying that we still can't have a huge impact, but the younger generations are the ones who's carrying the torch at this time. But what are we passing on?
Man, how old are you, man?
Hey, I put myself in the category with y'all. I don't want to make y'all feel bad. You know what I'm saying? Look, I don't want to make y'all feel bad.
You're 28 years old. You a phenomenal mind, man. You got a beautiful mind, man. He's talking about we old. Like I'm like this dude 28 years old.
But we have to instill the knowledge that we have to our younger kids. At the same time, we cannot allow them to be put in a mindset where you have to comply, though, right? And when I say comply, man, don't conform to fit somebody else's needs because that's what you think normal is. Because what's happening is not normal. It's not normal.
Agreed.
It's not.
Agreed. But let me co-tail on what Rob said because it's coming up to the half on me. But let me just comment on what Rob said. He made a really good point. He said when he gets pulled over and he knows that his tags are up to date, he has his insurance, his license is straight. He has a certain sense of calm when he interacts with the police officer, and the police officer can perceive that. But if you riding around, and this is to my brothers out there, if you riding around, your tags are expired, you don't have insurance, your license is revoked or suspended, you don't have a driver's license, didn't have your seatbelt on, you blew the stop sign, you're speeding, you got a half-smoked blunt and an open liquor in the car, and then you're talking about why they messing with me, they always mess with me. That's not the same thing. And we as Black people need to make that distinction. There are times where if you get pulled over and all your stuff is straight and they still messing with you, that's racism. But if you riding around dirty, the police officer is doing their job when they pull you over.
Hey man,
that's the media.
Hey, let me
that's
say
the media that plays.
Like I've drove around for many years on suspended license. You know what I'm saying? Would have smoked blunts and liquor in the car. Okay, all right. And let me just tell you, I've never gone to jail for that, and I've been stopped many times. You know what I'm saying? So even when we say like they messing with us, you see what I'm saying? Like I just know how to act in that kind of situation. You know what I'm saying? Like I ain't got my license is suspended, my car license is suspended, my tag out of date, and I got drugs. Come on, man. I know how to behave in that kind of situation.
That is not advice from the collective perspective. That is only. That is a man on the island with his own opinion right now. So anyway, hey Ernest, plug yourself real quick, man.
Hey man, this is your boy Ernest, man at Ernest Sense and Instagram. Also, this is your boy, man, making his way in that shadow work as well. Shadow work counseling. Also, pastor. Your boy, your friend, whatever, all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Ernest Sense. Also, Ernest L. Johnson, Facebook. With that, I'm out.
My man Dave Seaton, man. Plug yourself, man.
Check me out on the Buchanan and Seaton Show on Fridays from 9 to midnight on WVON 1690, the Talk of Chicago. You can also follow me on Twitter at David A. Seaton, and you can check me out as Seaton Speaks. Got a ton of good content there. And last but not least, you can check me out on the first Monday of every month on Word Television out of Philadelphia. You can check that out on wordtv.com.
James, give me a word of the day, man, before you check out of here, man.
A word of the day gonna be compassion, man. We can't forget about compassion, man. That's one thing that the world is kind of getting, they losing track of it, compassion. You never know what somebody else is going through. A simple hi can go a long way, man. Compassion.
Hey, thank you for your service, James, man. I salute
Yeah,
you,
man.
brother. I love you. You know what I'm saying? You're a fantastic young man. You're a great example of what young men should sound like, because you're a generation under me. So you're a fantastic example, and I've always appreciated how you are, who you are, and what you've become. You're an example a lot of men should follow. So with that, the collective perspective is out, baby. Deuces. Good stuff, y'all. Let me end the stream.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.